Hey guys, welcome back to Life Between Lifts. I'm your host, Alina.
And I am your host, Drew. Today's episode is on how to build a training split. This was one that was highly requested from you guys on our Instagram. So we are going to split this up into two episodes just because if not, it would be very, very long. But more information for you guys. We're going to start off by just chatting about why a split is important instead of just following random workouts that you see on the gram.
Yeah. So, like Drew said, we could literally yap about this forever. So, we're going to split it up between like setting up your workouts this time, and then we'll go a little bit more in depth on the next episode. So, stay tuned for that. But we broke it down for you guys to make it a little bit easier. So, we're going to have 3 steps when it comes to like actually building out your program here. So, going into step 1, I want you to ask yourself, how many days can you actually train? Like, not how many days do I want to train? How many days can I train in a perfect world? Like, how many days can you actually train and like also recover from at the same time too? Consistently. Yeah, yeah, because maybe 1 week you could hit 5 workouts, but we want to make sure this is like consistent for like Drew and I have talked about before, 8 to 12 weeks. Like that's the minimum you should be in a split. For a 2 day split, I would highly recommend doing like 2 full body days just so we could hit a little bit of everything. If we're doing like an upper and a lower day, it doesn't make too much sense.
Also, for the 2 day split, you should know that these workouts are going to be a little bit longer than compared to if you were working out like 4 days a week or 5 days a week. So I think that's something with clients. We are going to try to get as much volume as we can in those 2 days, but probably, not as much volume as we would if we had a few more days. So that's just something to take into account as well.
Yeah. And then going into 3 days, a couple different ways you could build out a 3 day split since we do have a little bit more to work with. So again, we could do like 3 full body days and kind of split it up throughout the week. And something else I want to add while I'm talking about this is ideally, especially if you're doing like a 3 day split, we want to try to spread our workouts out throughout the week. So instead of hitting all of your workouts Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe try to split them out like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So then this way you can actually recover from your workouts and you can show up feeling a little bit stronger, a little bit more fresh. So that's one of the ways that you could build a split. And then your other day or your other way could be like an upper, lower, and then maybe like a full body, or if like there's anything else that you want to focus on, maybe it's not a full body, but maybe if you want to focus on like glutes and shoulders, that could be like a glutes and shoulders day.
I think that that's probably one of my most common is the upper lower full body day, just because some clients really enjoy still being able to like separate body parts, but then we have that full body day to focus on what they prefer, like Alina said. And then I do have some clients for a 3 day split on two lower and one upper. This one's not as common, but I do have some clients who have maybe trained like 4 to 5 times a week in the past, and life has gotten really busy and they want to pull back to 3 days a week, and they maybe already have sufficient muscle in their upper body. So then they are okay doing two lower, one upper. But I would say the most common is the 3 full body across the board, and then upper, lower, full body.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say too, like talking about maybe feeling like, okay, I've grown a little bit too much in my upper body. I don't want to go off track too much here, but I also want to say, like, if you have literally just started training, you just started lifting, you're going to be okay doing like a lower upper full body and like training upper a little bit more. Drew is specifically talking about like people who have been in the gym for years and years and like they do have a good amount of muscle in their upper body, because a lot of times like you don't have as much muscle as you think. Like even me and Drew as coaches who have been lifting for years and years, we still like sometimes we're like, I want more muscle. But thinking of it as that way too, like you're not gonna get bulky right off the rip from like training 3 days. So try not to stress about that. And that's
Well,
also
it,
why
it takes just so long, like
it takes
so,
so
so
long.
long. Like Alina and I have been lifting for years, and I'm like, I still feel like a shrimp. So
Yeah.
everyone has their preferences too,
Yeah.
right? So like if a client, comes to me and they're like, I truly don't want to, build my upper body, we're obviously going to take them through a deficit so they can see, okay, what does your upper body actually look like without body fat or a lot of body fat on it? And then usually when they get to that point, they're like, oh, okay, like I actually I want a little bit more upper body mass. Okay, now getting into a 4 day split. Most common is like two lower, two upper. I think that is what I do majority for all my clients. Those days can be split up differently. So maybe the lower body days, there's like one day is a glute and ham focus, one day is a glute and quad focus. Maybe your upper body day is like 2 full upper body days or a push and pull day, like this can look very, very different and it's going to be specific to the individual. And that's one thing that we didn't really touch on is that we're just kind of giving you guys like an outline of like, okay, if this is a 2-day split, this is what it could look like. If it's a 3-day split, this is what it could look like. But like Alina's 4-day split is going to look different than mine. So right now we're just talking about like the split, not necessarily the exercises.
Yeah. And that's something like we talked about before that we'll get into a little bit deeper on the next episode is like exercise selection too. And like Drew said, upper and lower, like it sounds very simple, but there's so many different ways that you could split that up as well. But going into 5 days, I think it's kind of similar to the 4 days. Like usually you're going to have those 2 days of upper, 2 days of lower, again, depending on your goals. And then that fifth day is going to be more like, okay, a specialization day or like a day that maybe we're bringing up like weak points. So again, it could be full body if you're like, I kind of want to just do everything one more time. Or this fifth day, usually for like women, I would say maybe it's like a glutes day, or a glutes and shoulders day or something like that, where we're just kind of hitting a little bit more volume. I will also say like, only do a 5-day split if you can recover from it, because even like I think I've only ever done like a 5-day split, maybe like a month in my entire life, like I've always just been like a 4-day split girl. And I feel like I recover so much better from 4 days. Like my fifth day, if I'm like in the gym lifting, I'm not able to give it my all. So think about that too. Like, what is your intensity looking like? What is your recovery looking like? Do you need that fifth day or do you just feel like you want that fifth day? Like, would you do better on a 4-day split? So asking yourself that too.
I think this is so important because I think majority of people come to coaching and they're like, I need to work out 5 days a week. Like for some reason, we have just told ourselves like Monday through Friday is when you work out, and then the weekends you don't, and it has to be 5 days. But I would say individuals who actually know how to train hard really don't need a 5 day split. I think you can get a good amount of gains in 4 days, but a lot of people don't know how to train hard. So I think that's like Alina said, she's like, I cannot recover super well from 5 days, but that's because look at her booty. She's
Thank
training
you.
hard.
I train
So
hard.
I think that's something to think about is like even sometimes people are like, oh, I still have a workout tomorrow. So maybe I'm not gonna push my legs as hard. Like if you're already thinking that, then we should just not be working out tomorrow and training hard in that day.
Um, Okay, now step two, what is actually a weak point? So I also want you guys to think about like an emotional weak point is going to be different than like a physical, like actual weak point. So you might think like, oh, I feel XYZ about my body or what have you. And I really want to work on that. And I think that's great. But also like having again a coach or just yourself like looking at your progress pictures. I think this is a great reason to take progress pictures, even if you're not a coach or you're not coaching with somebody, because then you can literally look at your progress pictures and like not in a mean way, but just like look at it as like, okay, this is data. Like, what can I bring up? So like for me going into like coaching with my coach, I was like, I really want to bring up my hamstrings. Like I feel like I have good glute development. I'm happy with that, but I feel like I've been focusing on that for so long that like my hamstrings and my quads are kind of like lagging a little bit. So that was a big focus for me is like I just wanted like full rounded like leg workouts there. So that's also going to be helpful when you are going in and like picking out your exercises and then also like what that fifth day is going to look like or like what your volume is going to be within your lower and your upper body days.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of backtrack on, I think it was last week's episode, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, when we
Uh-huh.
talked about red and green flags of coaches. This is huge. If a coach programs for you without seeing like your progress photos or like asking you about goals or just like knowing anything about you and you get a program, like how is that specific to you? Like I can look at clients, some clients are really good about submitting their photos before we actually program. And I can be like, oh, okay, this person is so quad dominant, like beyond quad dominant. They got nice, juicy, beautiful quads, but maybe they lack a little bit of the booty and the hamstring in the hamstring area. And so we are like gonna go a little bit harder on that. But that's why coaching is so important, or having a good coach is important, because you shouldn't just be getting like Alina, our programs look very, very different. So I think everything she said is spot on, but like pictures help so much for coaches, for you, just to be able to pick those like, laggy muscles or weak points.
Yeah. And also like even having like imbalances too, and like talking about that with your coach or yourself, and having that on your like intake form if you're working with a coach is helpful too, because then we can kind of like dial into that a little bit more. So if you're feeling like, okay, I'm way stronger on this one side, or sometimes we can even like visually see it. Like I have a client where like her back picture, like you can literally tell, like, okay, one side is weaker, like her glutes and her calves are like weaker than the other side. So also taking that into consideration too. And like when we talk about picking exercises, like you are going to want to have unilateral movements, but maybe that's a little bit more of a focus, if it is somebody who has like big imbalances, which small imbalances are normal. Like we're going to have a stronger side and a weaker side. But if you're like overly compensating, or like you're having back pain on one side, or you're visually seeing it, that's where you really have to kind of dial into that with your programming.
Beautiful. Everything chef's kiss, nothing to add there. Going into step 3, so volume and recovery. We're going to touch on this a little bit, but when you think about like how many sets should you be having per muscle group, I think this is a question that's talked about a lot, and it really is a range. But one thing that you need to think about is like, are you just wanting to maintain, or are you actually wanting to grow? So if you're focusing on maintenance, then we think about like anywhere from like 6 to 8, 6 to 10 hard sets. And then if we're thinking about growth, then it's anywhere from 10 to 15, maybe even a little bit higher, but 10 to 15 hard quality sets as well. And I think that is the most important, is that we're actually talking about sets that are taken to failure or pretty damn close. So if you are doing like, I don't know, remember back in the day when people would do like 10 sets of hip thrusts? So crazy that, like, people would literally do, like, 10 by 10 of hip thrust, and I'm like, "You literally just hit your weekly worth growth volume in
Yeah.
one workout." So,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. We're talking about across a week. So, think about if you're doing a workout and, let's use Alina as an example because she wants to grow her hamstrings, and she has, like, one day she's doing leg curls, and that's the only, hamstring workout that she does all week. That's literally only 3 sets if she's doing, like, 3 sets of something that she's hitting her hamstring. So then maybe she's doing like straight leg deadlift, and then that's another 3 sets. So now she's only at 6, and then she has to add another exercise. So it actually is more difficult to add up than I think people think, unless you're just doing like jump volume bullshit, 10 sets of hip
Chunk
thrusts.
volume bullshit. That'll be the title. And that's also how you can kind of determine to like me, or like Drew said, your maintenance. Like again, another thing that like I'm trying to do is like I want to maintain like my lats. I don't want to grow my lats. I'm like, okay, I got the wings. I don't need like bigger wings. So like for me, I'm right around that range of like I'm still doing lat pull downs. Like I'm not completely like getting them out, but I'm only doing a couple sets and I'm not taking them to like full on failure. So I'm able to maintain my muscle mass, but I'm not like building even more, if that makes sense. And then that also gives me room in my workouts too to like add a couple more sets of like things I do want to grow. So like my shoulders, or then having like another specialty day with a little bit more lower body. So yeah, definitely. At the same time too, we want to be able to like recover from everything. So if we are going in doing a bunch of junk volume and you're working out 5 days a week, you're lifting 5 days and you're not recovering from it, that's not going to benefit you in any way. Like you have to recover harder than you train, or you have to just the same. So I think that that's a big part of it. Okay, so we covered our 3 steps. We have how many days can you actually train? We have what is actually a weak point. And then the third thing is looking at volume and recovery. So now let's go into a couple scenarios, which I think is going to be fun. Brew, you're going to be up first. This is
Okay.
scenario one. We have a 28-year-old. She can work out 3 days per week. She is a nurse. She works like the 12-hour shift. She wants some glute growth, but she's also has a very high amount of stress, probably with being a nurse and working 12s. So what split would you put her on?
This is really common for all of our nurse clients. Most nurses are working out 3 days a week. I would likely put her on, well, 2 options, either 3 full bodies days or an upper, lower, and then her third day being like more glute focused. That third day could be a full body. So she maybe still has a little bit of upper body in there, but since she is wanting to grow her glutes and that was a main goal of hers, likely one day of lower body isn't going to get us there unless we're like hammering on the glutes. So I would probably do upper, lower, full body with a glute focus.
Love that.
Okay, your turn. So this client of yours is working out 4 days a week, or she can work out 4 days a week. She really wants some bolder, juicy shoulders. She is in a deficit. So goal is to lose body fat. And she works part-time. So she has like a little bit more time on her hands to dedicate to working out.
Okay, this girl kinda sounds like me, so I got it covered. Obviously would set her up with a 4-day split, so doing upper, lower, or vice versa, lower, upper, and she wants a little bit more of a shoulder priority, so I would probably do full uppers for her versus, like, splitting up upper pull and upper push. That wouldn't really make sense. So then this way, like, on both of her upper days, we could hit a little bit of shoulders. So, like, maybe one day we would have, like, shoulder press, lateral raises, and then maybe on your other day, we could do like an incline press or a single arm shoulder press and maybe like a front raise or something like that. But then making sure that we're having like some shoulder work, some delt work on both days. And then lower body, again, it would just kind of depend what her pictures look like. It doesn't sound like she has like any specific like glute growth goals or anything like that. So probably just like some well-rounded lower body days and kind of splitting those up evenly, which again we'll be getting into next week, so I don't want to dive into that too deeply. And then also I would just make sure that like she's feeling good on this. I think she would be totally fine adding in some cardio and like still have time for that with those 4 days, even if they were like after her upper body days. I think that would work out really well. And then just keep an eye on recovery, make sure she's feeling good in the deficit.
I have something to add that is random, but I just thought about it.
Okay.
A few things. One thing that I want to talk about up above regarding volume is that there are some muscle groups that can handle more volume than others. Like shoulders, usually you can have quite a bit more volume. So that's just something to think about. Or like maybe you personally can handle more glute volume versus like your hamstrings. Like my hamstrings, I legitimately can do like one set of hamstring curls that I can't walk for 4 days. So like there are just some muscle groups that can handle a little bit more volume. So you will learn that as you train more. And then also with my nurse, it is important, like we said, hey, we can't or we don't want to have 3 days back to back of training. But sometimes, like if a nurse only has those 3 days to work out because she's doing 12s, then we may have some days back to back instead of like having a Monday, Wednesday, Friday lift or whatever, just depending on your schedule. Like, don't feel like just because we said like you should not be doing that. If those are the only days that you can truly get them in, we would rather you get them in than not.
Yeah, that's kind of more like in a perfect world, like we want to split them up, but if it doesn't always work like that, it's not the end of the world. And that's also something that's like good to take into consideration too, because when you're programming it, like you also want to make sure, like, okay, if she's doing them all three back to back, like we don't want to have something that's going to be really hard one day and then the next day she's still going to be sore and then we're going to go and hit that again. So, like, we're not going to have leg curls on one day and then leg curls again the next day. You know what I mean? Like, that just wouldn't make sense. Even if her goal was hamstring development, we would kind of spread it out a little bit more. And then coming back to recovery too, like Drew said, there are some muscle groups and then also some movements too that are going to be a little bit easier to recover from. So, like, for example, with like glute growth, I know we talk a lot about that. Sorry, guys. But like glute growth, it's going to be a little bit easier to recover from like movements that are working your glutes in the shortened position. So, like your hip thrusts, your cable kickbacks, things like that. That's going to be a lot easier to recover from versus like an RDL where it's in the stretch position. It is going to be a little bit harder to recover from those. So that's something else you can take into consideration when making like exercise selection too.
And that is why, gosh, here's passionate Drew coming out. That is why you don't talk to Chat GPT to do a goddamn program, is because when we are looking at our clients, we are like taking into consideration like length in position, shorten position, like your volume, your pictures, like all of those things. Chat may not know all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they do at this point, but like
Yeah.
it's just
Wait,
frustrating to me.
Drew, I feel like that would be good maybe in one of the episodes, where we like put it into chat and see what chat says and then just like
Oh
roast.
yeah.
Either be like, "Oh, this is good," or just roast chat
Yeah.
and be like, "Don't
Ro that
listen to
that should be the
this."
episode, is just like us roasting Chat. That would be fun. Let's do it.
I love that.
Okay, rapid fire mistakes that people make. Number one is programming 5 days, but only training three. So super common, like I said, people get super excited. They're like, program 5 days for me, I could totally make it work. And then they only can actually do 3 out of the week. This also can mean different meaning of programming 5 days, but training three is maybe you are working out 5 days, but you're only training 3 of those days. There's a difference between training
Oh,
and working out. So like maybe you actually train to failure 3 out of the 5 days, but the other 2 days you're just coasting, texting a boy in between chats or something. I don't know, scrolling the TikTok, and you're not actually training. So
yeah.
there's two ways to look at that, but programming 5 days, but only training three.
Yeah, and going off of that too, like not training to failure or not ever training to failure, I feel like you should say, because obviously like we don't want to do like all 3 of our sets, like, all to failure for every single exercise, like, that's a great way to, like, destroy your central nervous system, I don't know. But we should at some point be training to failure. Like, you should have maybe a top set or just a hard set where you're, like, going ham, you know? Like, we shouldn't always be, like, walking out of the gym like, "Yeah, that was fine." Like, whatever. We should be
Yeah.
like, "Okay, that was hard." Like
Yeah. And I think that's the difference too between like a little bit more advanced lifters and like beginner lifters. Like there will be times when I have a client that I'm just like, yeah, take every set to failure. But the reason why I say that is because they don't actually train to failure, right? So I say like, go to failure, but maybe their failure is really leaving 2 reps in reserve. And so then when I get a client video, I'm like, damn, this girl trains hard. Then we're adding in like top sets or like only 2 sets, like only 2 sets to failure and a back off set or whatever that looks like. So another just tidbit is making sure that you're sending your training videos to your coach because that
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
For sure, yeah, because that's also, like Drew said, depending on your experience too, like, I'm not gonna stress a client out and put, like, top sets and tempo and, like, everything else. I'm not gonna do that to a client who just started lifting, you know what I mean? So, we're just gonna get comfortable with the movements and go from there and, like, send to training videos and push harder, and then you can kind of get a little bit more specific with your training.
Next mistake is changing splits every 3 weeks. I know we've touched on this so many times, but again, sticking with the program at least 8 to 12 weeks. I think I've been on a program for like, 6 months at some point. Like I just stay on it for as long as I possibly can handle. So just trying to, as long as you are progressing, of course, but at least, 8 to 12 weeks. If you're changing, some people even sell like 4 week, splits. So just making sure you're staying on it for a good chunk of time.
Yeah, repeat it again if it's a
Mhm.
4-week split.
Yeah.
See how you're feeling. And that kinda goes into, yeah, not running a phase long enough, wanting to push for those 8 to 12 weeks. And then another mistake is just completely ignoring nutrition, not taking that into consideration, because you could have like, you can't as the saying goes, you can't out train a bad diet. And not to say that it's, like, bad in any way, but making sure like, okay, we're getting our protein, we're having our carbs to like also help push our sessions too. So making sure that you are paying attention to protein, you're getting enough food in, you're getting enough protein in, and yeah, going from there.
Yeah. So, next episode, we want to be able to dive into this a little bit deeper. So, we did keep this pretty big picture on purpose because next episode, we want you guys to DM us like how many days are you training? What is your priority? Are you cutting? Are you maintaining? Are you building? Give us all the information about you. And then we are going to live do your split exercises, what we would do for you. So, anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm excited about that. So if you made it this far, you deserve the help from us.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us yap today. If you like this episode, send it to a friend, leave us a review.
Not if it's bad though.
Stay strong, stay sane. See you next Tuesday.